You ever feel the warmth of someone's hand, and not realize it's the spark that's about to set your whole life on fire? That's what happened the night Ethan touched my shoulder in the kitchen, gentle, familiar, comforting. My name is Linda Barrett. I was 67, newly widowed, and trying to survive in a house that smelled like grief. My husband, Henry, had died 3 months earlier after a slow, cruel illness that hollowed him out. For 39 years, he was my anchor. When he passed, I thought the loneliness would kill me next. But then Ethan stepped in. He wasn't just my son-in-law. He was like a second son. Married to my only daughter, Rachel. A charming man, always thoughtful. He'd bring me soup when I forgot to eat, sit beside me during stormy nights, and tell me stories about how Henry once fixed the garage door with duct tape and sheer stubbornness. He never crossed a line until he did. And when he did, he shattered everything. It started with a kiss. One night, after Rachel and the kids had gone upstairs and I was washing dishes in my robe. I remember the tap on my shoulder, the way he looked at me like I was someone else, someone desired. "You don't have to be alone, Linda," he whispered. And then he kissed me. Not on the cheek. Not like a son. Full on the lips. I froze. My hands were still wet, soap bubbles clinging to my fingers like they knew this was a mistake. I pulled away, horrified, and gasped, "What are you doing?" He stepped back, flushed, embarrassed, or maybe pretending to be. "I'm sorry. I thought you felt the same." The next morning, he was cold. Quiet. He didn't say good morning. And by evening, Rachel was glaring at me like I'd murdered someone. I didn't understand, until she said it. "Ethan told me what happened. That you tried to kiss him. That you've been confused since Dad died." My heart collapsed. I stammered, tried to explain, but the more I spoke, the worse it sounded. My daughter's eyes filled with tears, of betrayal, not for me, but for him. "I don't know what's gotten into you, Mom," she said. "Maybe it's time you stayed somewhere else. Just for a while." A week later, they changed the locks. Told the neighbors I was suffering memory issues. Told the pastor I'd been inappropriate. Told my grandchildren that Grandma needed help. I was erased. But here's the thing. Henry, my late husband, always believed in preparing for storms. He'd set up a security system 2 years before he died, one with audio. What no one knew was that the kitchen had a motion-triggered recording unit. I found the footage. Ethan's whisper. His kiss. My rejection. All of it. I also found Henry's final will, the real one. Not the one Ethan convinced Rachel to submit to probate, but the sealed copy Henry left in our safety deposit box at the bank, listing me as sole trustee of the estate, not Rachel. Not Ethan. I didn't say a word. Not yet. Let them believe their story. Let them isolate me. Let them strip me of dignity, respect, even my family name. Because I had one last weapon they never saw coming. And it wasn't just the recording. It was something darker. Something Ethan didn't know I knew. He wasn't always faithful to my daughter. He wasn't even who he claimed to be. And now? I was going to prove it. I didn't cry when they threw me out. I didn't beg when Rachel changed her number. I didn't even flinch when my granddaughter, sweet little Noelle, told me she wasn't allowed to talk to bad grandma. I just walked away carrying a suitcase and a truth too sharp to speak aloud. For a week, I slept on my friend Janice's couch, pretending I was just sorting some family things out. But my nights weren't spent sleeping. I was planning. Henry wasn't a tech genius, but he was suspicious by nature, especially of Ethan. He once told me, "That man smiles with too many teeth." Henry had stored a backup of the camera recordings on a USB drive, one I thought had been lost when we renovated the kitchen. Turns out, he hid it in the most Henry place imaginable, inside the old cookie jar shaped like a rooster, wrapped in aluminum foil. Janice still had it. She inherited it after Henry gave it away during a garage cleanout. I cracked it open, heart pounding. And there it was. Ethan's voice. His breathy whisper. You don't have to be alone. And then, the kiss. My gasp. My rejection. Crystal clear. I watched it once. Then twice. Then backed it up to a secure cloud I created under a fake name. Next, I took a trip to the bank where Henry's safety deposit box still listed me as an authorized party. Inside was his original will, the one that stated everything: the house, the stocks, even the family trust, was to remain under my name until Rachel turned 50. Ethan had forged an addendum. I had proof. But I didn't go straight to court. Not yet. Because if Ethan was bold enough to lie about me, bold enough to seduce his wife's mother, then something told me he was hiding more. And I was right. I hired a private investigator, an old student of mine, now working independently out of Vermont. He dug up things I never could have imagined. Ethan had 3 previous names, 2 fake businesses, and a sealed juvenile record in California. Even worse, he had a burner phone. The investigator cloned it. And what we found broke me. He was sexting another woman, calling her his real wife, making jokes about how the old lady, that would be me, almost ruined everything with her guilt. That's when I stopped grieving. That's when I started sharpening my knives. You'd think after 39 years of marriage, you'd remember every face at your husband's funeral. But grief plays tricks on the memory. You notice the flowers but forget the thorns. I remembered the white roses Rachel placed on Henry's casket. I remembered the eulogy Ethan gave, his hand on my shoulder like a protective son, like a liar in plain sight. But what I didn't remember was the woman in red. Janice was the one who spotted her in a photo. We were scrolling through images from the funeral when she paused and said, "Wait, who's she?" A slim blonde in oversized sunglasses, standing a few feet behind Ethan, her hand touching her lips as she stared at him. Not at Henry's casket. Not at Rachel. Just Ethan. Like he was hers. I zoomed in. The woman was too polished for a distant cousin. She wasn't crying. She wasn't praying. She was watching Ethan like a wife watches her man speak at a podium. And then I remembered, the night before the funeral, Ethan had taken a phone call in the garden. Said it was work. Said it was a supplier issue. But when I walked outside to offer him a cup of tea, he jumped like a guilty teenager and said, "I'll call you later, babe, hon." At the time, I thought it was stress. Now I knew better. With the help of my investigator, we ran facial recognition on the woman in red. Her name was Elise Kramer. She owned a boutique in Seattle. Single, but previously involved in a bankruptcy scandal involving, guess who? A man named Eric Dalton. Ethan's alias. It was a tangled web, and Ethan thought he was the spider. But he forgot, I'm the widow of a man who taught me how to read financial statements like fairy tales. And in Ethan's story? Every chapter ended in fraud. I tracked Elise's business filings. Her boutique was co-owned with an ED Consulting. That was Ethan. And he had quietly drained $38,000 from Rachel's retirement account last year to fund it. Rachel didn't even know. She was too busy grieving her father and protecting her husband from the crazy mother she thought I'd become. I wasn't crazy. I was clear. Ethan had seduced me, lied about me, erased me, and was bleeding my daughter dry to fund a second life with his mistress. It wasn't just betrayal. It was war. So I made my first move. I emailed Elise, using a fake identity, of course. Claimed I was a reporter writing a piece on powerful women behind the scenes of boutique empires. Flattery does wonders. She replied within an hour, flattered and intrigued. We scheduled a Zoom call. And when she showed up on camera, smiling and glowing, I leaned in and said, "Do you know who Ethan Barrett really is?" Her smile faded. Her brows pulled together. And just like that, I had my first crack in Ethan's empire. At first, Elise tried to play dumb. I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong man, she said, but her voice wobbled. Her pupils danced like someone watching the floor fall out beneath them. I didn't push too hard. I just smiled and said, he kissed me in my kitchen. Told me I didn't have to be alone. Then told my daughter I seduced him. I'm the mother-in-law, Elise. The one he said was senile. Her eyes widened like she'd been slapped. I could see it, the storm building behind her face. She knew something was wrong, she just didn't expect it to come from a woman who looked like someone's church knitting partner. I didn't know he was still married, she whispered. I waited. Silence is a powerful tool. She filled it fast. He told me she left him. Said the kids were hers and that she hated them. Said he was staying with her mom until the divorce settled. Jesus. She sat back and covered her mouth. I watched her crumble. I should have felt sorry for her. But I didn't. I'd been cast out of my home like a criminal while this woman played house with my daughter's husband. Sorry didn't cut it. I asked her one question, would you be willing to help me ruin him? Her eyes narrowed. What do you need? And just like that, the betrayal was complete. Ethan had turned his back on his wife, his children, and me. And now his mistress would turn on him too. Over the next week, Elise sent me emails, screenshots, call logs, even voicemails where Ethan confessed to siphoning money from Rachel. But one recording sealed his fate. In it, he said, laughing, if the old woman had just kissed me back, I'd have bought her a condo and left them both. But she acted like I was poison. So now she gets what she gets. I played it over and over again. She gets what she gets. I sent the recording to Rachel anonymously. Along with photos of Ethan and Elise kissing outside a restaurant, time-stamped during the week Henry died. I knew my daughter wouldn't believe me. But she'd believe the evidence. Rachel didn't reply to the email. She didn't call. But 3 days later, a package showed up at Janice's. No return address. Inside was the gold locket I'd given her on her wedding day. It had a tiny photo of the three of us, her, me, and Henry. No note. Just the locket. That was her first apology. Silent, but real. But I wasn't done. Because I had something neither Rachel nor Ethan knew existed, a second will. And I was about to make it public. Grief can make you miss things. But Henry, God rest his stubborn soul, never missed anything. He'd suspected Ethan from the beginning, but he didn't want to poison our daughter's marriage. So instead of confrontation, he left behind a weapon, a sealed copy of his true will, filed at a small, independent legal office in Ash Hollow, a quiet lakeside town no one ever thinks to check. He never told Rachel. Never told me. Until after his death, when the lawyer called and said, Mrs. Barrett, we have something your husband left behind, for your eyes only. I remember walking into that wood-paneled office, expecting maybe a love letter. A poem. A goodbye. What I got instead was Henry's final punch from the grave. The will was airtight. Dated, notarized, and witnessed. It clearly stated that the house, the stocks, the accounts, everything, was to remain under my sole control until Rachel turned 50 and proved she was financially independent from Ethan. And get this, he even included a clause, under no circumstances shall Ethan W. Barrett control or benefit from any estate property, directly or indirectly. Henry had seen the snake before anyone else. The forged version that Ethan filed had my signature on it, copied from a Valentine's Day card I once wrote, sloppily pasted into a document with new terms and a new date. My investigator confirmed it, a forged digital composite. Ethan thought he was clever. But now, I had the original. And I was going to bury him with it. I waited for the right day. And it came like fate. Rachel and Ethan were hosting a fundraiser at their house, a community event for Ethan's veteran business outreach company. It was a sham organization, just like his marriage. Elise told me he was planning to announce a big investment that night. A new program. New donors. Big promises. So I showed up. In black. Uninvited. Rachel gasped when she saw me. Ethan turned white. I walked through their garden like a ghost, holding a single manila envelope. A few guests tried to stop me, but I smiled and said, "Just returning something that belongs to my daughter." Then I stepped up to the microphone where Ethan was about to speak. "Forgive me," I said calmly, "but before the lies begin, I'd like to share one small truth." I opened the envelope. Inside, the real will, the notarized copy, and a USB drive. I plugged it into the speaker system and played the recording of Ethan's voice, his sneer, his laughter, his words. If the old woman had just kissed me back, the crowd went still. Then came gasps. Whispers. Someone shouted, "Is that real?" And Rachel. Rachel stood there like her bones had left her body. She didn't move. Didn't cry. Just stared at Ethan like she was seeing him for the first time. Ethan tried to grab the mic. "This is a setup. She's senile. She's been stalking me." I handed him the will. "Is that my signature too?" I asked. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The event ended in chaos. Donors walking out. A news reporter from the local paper asking me for a quote. I gave her one: "Truth doesn't die with the dead. It waits. And then it strikes." But I wasn't finished yet. Because Ethan hadn't just tried to ruin me. He had drained my daughter. Betrayed her. Lied to her face for years. And I had one final card to play, a very public one. The day after the fundraiser fiasco, Ethan tried damage control. He called Rachel's friends. Claimed I was mentally unstable. Said the will was fake. Blamed Elise. Even hinted at a lawsuit. But the truth has a scent, and once it's in the air, no lie can cover it up. The local newspaper ran a headline that morning: "Mother-in-law exposes businessman's double life at charity event." The article quoted Ethan's voice verbatim. The recording had gone viral. Someone at the fundraiser uploaded it. And now? Everyone knew. But viral wasn't enough. Not for me. You see, Ethan didn't just lie, he laundered money. Elise gave me bank statements. Dozens of transfers from the family account into shell companies. Companies that didn't exist. Some in Rachel's name. If things had gone the way he planned, Rachel would have taken the fall for his crimes. He was planning to leave her. Blame the fraud on her. File for full custody of the kids. Start a new life with Elise, or maybe someone newer. Elise wasn't even his first affair. I took the evidence to a lawyer. One of Henry's old colleagues. When he saw the paperwork, he whistled low and said, "This is felony-level fraud. He's looking at serious time." But I didn't go to the police just yet. Instead, I called a press conference. It was held outside the courthouse. Nothing fancy. A podium. A few reporters. A printed banner behind me that read, "Justice for Families Betrayed." I told my story, briefly, calmly. I played Ethan's voice again. Showed the will. Displayed charts of the stolen funds. A local news crew broadcasted it live. And as I spoke, people began to gather. Mothers. Widows. Women holding hands and nodding like they understood what it meant to be cast aside and called crazy. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I told the truth. And it rang louder than any lie Ethan ever spun. Rachel didn't attend. But later that night, I got a text. It was a photo of her wedding ring, placed on the kitchen counter beside a note that read, "You were right. I'm sorry." I wept like a child. But I still wasn't done. Because Ethan hadn't been arrested yet. And I had a plan for that too. One involving handcuffs, a public restaurant, and the very people he thought he could charm. I chose the restaurant carefully. Classy but casual, the kind of place where politicians sipped wine and realtors sealed deals over steaks. Ethan had a standing reservation there every Thursday night. Elise confirmed it, he always met investors there. Always performed. Always peacocked. I reserved a table across the room, wore a long gray coat and a quiet smile, and waited for the show. He strutted in like nothing had happened, hair slicked back, new watch glinting under the lights. Beside him was a woman I didn't recognize. Another one. Younger, thinner, fake laughing at everything he said. He poured her a glass of red wine, touched her knee under the table, and said, "I'm about to close the biggest deal of my career." Oh, he had no idea. The police arrived at 8:17 p.m. 2 officers, plainclothes, calm and courteous. One walked straight to his table. "Ethan Barrett?" the officer asked. "We need you to come with us." Ethan stood up, trying to look confused. "Is this about that crazy woman? The one from the fundraiser?" That was his mistake. Because that's when I stood up, too. Took off my coat. Held up a folder. "Actually," I said, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear, "it's about embezzlement, fraud, and identity theft. And this crazy woman has bank records, audio recordings, and 5 signed affidavits. Enjoy your night." The whole place fell silent. You could hear forks clink on plates. The woman with him gasped, grabbing her purse like it was suddenly infected. Ethan turned red, then white. He lunged toward me, but the officers grabbed him, cuffed him right there between the wine glasses and the filet mignon. Someone clapped. I think it was the bartender. As they led him out, he screamed, "Rachel will believe me. She'll fight for me." I leaned in and whispered, "Rachel filed for divorce this morning. And she gave me power of attorney. You picked the wrong family to ruin." The doors swung closed behind him. And for the first time in over a year, I exhaled fully. But justice in a courtroom wasn't enough. I needed something more permanent. Something poetic. Because Ethan didn't just steal money. He stole my family. And now? I was going to make sure he never saw daylight again. I should have felt peace watching Ethan hauled off like a common thief. I should have slept better, knowing he was behind bars, at least temporarily. But revenge isn't peace. It's fire. And when it starts burning, it doesn't stop until everything you loved, or hated, is ash. The media storm exploded. Headlines like "Charity Fraud Exposed by Widow" and "Son-in-Law Turned Seducer, Now a Suspect" were everywhere. I became an unexpected symbol. Some called me brave. Others, bitter. I didn't care. I hadn't done this for a spotlight, I did it to save my daughter, and to take back my name. But in the middle of all that chaos, a letter arrived. No stamp. No return address. Just a single sheet of paper, folded neatly and left on my porch. "You're not the only one he fooled. I tried to warn Rachel once. She didn't believe me. Maybe now she will." No signature. But taped to the back was a photocopy of a high school yearbook photo. Ethan. And next to it, a girl. Her name was Jennifer Cross. I took the name to my investigator. Within days, he called me back, voice tight, "Linda. Jennifer Cross filed a restraining order against Ethan in 2006. He was 18. She was 16. It was sealed when his parents paid the judge. But I found the document. It detailed manipulation. Obsession. A pattern. The charming smile. The isolation tactics. The gaslighting. The lies. It wasn't new. He'd been doing this since before Rachel even met him. And I had to wonder, had he targeted Rachel on purpose? Jennifer agreed to meet. She was a mother now. Married, stable, still haunted. We met at a small cafe near the courthouse. She brought a folder full of old emails Ethan had sent her, threats he made when she tried to move on. "I knew he'd resurface," she said. "He's the kind of man who burrows into families. He doesn't break in. He seduces the door open." Her words hit like bricks. Because if Ethan had a history of this, Maybe Rachel wasn't his only target in mine. I went home and started digging through old emails, texts, anything Ethan had ever written to me in those early years. That's when I found something I had forgotten, an old birthday card he gave me, before Henry died. In it, he'd written, "You're the strongest woman I know. Sometimes I wonder if I married the wrong Barrett." I dropped the card. Because that line, it didn't sound like a joke anymore. I thought I had seen the worst of Ethan. But then I found the message on my old tablet. A synced backup from Rachel's iPad. A conversation I was never meant to see. Ethan and Rachel. From 3 years ago. "Ethan, if she ever gets in the way, we can always say she's losing it." The dementia angle worked with my mom. "Rachel, don't say that. She's not your mom." "Ethan, but she's not yours either." "Not really. She raised you like a project. Let me handle it." I sat there, frozen. Because it wasn't just Ethan. Rachel had known something. Had watched it happen. Had helped. Even if she regretted it later. Even if she apologized with a locket. She had chosen him. Now the betrayal burned hotter than ever. And my revenge? It wasn't going to stop with Ethan. I stared at that message until my eyes blurred. My hands trembled, not from age, but from rage. Rachel. My daughter. My baby girl I once rocked to sleep with lullabies and trembling hope. She had known. Maybe not everything. Maybe not the kiss. But she had heard the tone in Ethan's voice. The cruelty. The manipulation. And she had helped him bury me. Not literally. But emotionally. Spiritually. Publicly. When she let him label me senile, unstable, she let the world believe I was slipping, so she could keep her picture-perfect marriage intact. That locket she sent me? A quiet apology? No. It was a coward's token. A peace offering from someone who helped dig the hole I was thrown into. I couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. I walked outside, barefoot, into the cold grass. The wind was sharp. The kind of wind that makes everything feel raw again. I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Henry." I think she loved him more than me. And then, through the wind, I heard something else, Henry's voice, not literally, but the words he used to say when we were raising Rachel. "Don't ever let a mistake go uncorrected, Linda. Or it grows roots." So I went back inside. And I made a decision. Ethan would go down. Fully. Legally. Publicly. But Rachel? Rachel would feel what it's like to stand on the wrong side of truth. She had filed for divorce. That was good. She had signed over temporary power of attorney to me to help fight Ethan. That was stupid. Because now, I controlled the family accounts. Including the trust Henry had secretly funneled into a quiet holding account after Ethan's first shady business move, a slush fund worth over $400,000. And guess what? It was in Rachel's name, but it required my countersignature. She thought I would use it to help her. Support the kids. Rebuild. But Rachel had already made her choice years ago. So I went to Henry's attorney, withdrew the funds legally, with full documentation, and moved every cent into a new foundation. One dedicated to helping women, especially mothers and grandmothers, navigate financial betrayal and domestic manipulation. The Barrett Foundation for Truth and Recovery. I created a press release, complete with a digital archive of everything: Ethan's fraud, Rachel's complicity, Jennifer's story, the high school restraining order, even excerpts from that old tablet backup. I didn't release it publicly yet. But I sent a copy to Rachel. No threats. No message. Just the file. 3 hours later, she showed up at my door. Tears streaming down her face. Makeup smeared. Her voice cracked like dry leaves. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't know how to stop him. I thought if I let it slide, he'd stay. For the kids." I stared at her. This woman I had raised. This woman who once held my hand in the hospital as I gave birth to her baby brother. And I said, "You didn't just let it slide, Rachel. You helped him shove me into silence. And now you want me to help you?" She sobbed harder. "I'm sorry, Mom. I am. Please," I stepped aside. "Let her inside." I made her tea. Let her cry. But I didn't forgive her. Not yet. Because forgiveness is earned. And Rachel hadn't even started to pay. The courtroom was packed. Not with supporters, not with friends, but with the curious. The scandal had turned into a town obsession. Everyone wanted a seat for the live theater of betrayal. Local reporters huddled in the back, notebooks ready. Ethan's lawyer, a slick man with a gelled smirk, looked more like a game show host than someone defending a con artist. Rachel sat 2 rows behind him, sunglasses on, face pale, lips pressed into a line. I didn't sit with her. I sat alone. Proudly. The prosecution had my evidence, recordings, emails, forged signatures, Jennifer's testimony. But Ethan's attorney wasn't going down without a show. "My client," he began, "is a man misled by grief. Manipulated by a mother-in-law who became obsessed with him. A woman who never sought therapy after the loss of her husband and fixated on Ethan as a substitute. This case isn't about fraud, it's about resentment. About vengeance disguised as justice." The jury blinked, unsure. Then he played his trump card, a video. A manipulated clip, just 2 seconds long, from the security camera in my kitchen. Me turning toward Ethan, wet hands on the counter, him leaning close. It looked ambiguous. He slowed it down, froze the frame where it looked like I was leaning in. "There's no audio in this version," the lawyer said, smiling, "but actions speak louder than words." I laughed out loud. Because he had used the altered version. Not the one from the original hard drive. So I stood. "Your Honor, may I approach?" The judge nodded. I handed him a sealed drive. "This is the unedited footage. With audio. And a date stamp. And a chain of custody signed by my husband's estate attorney." The judge inserted it. The courtroom silenced. Ethan's voice filled the air, "You don't have to be alone." My gasp. My retreat. My sharp, "What are you doing?" Then silence. Then Ethan's voice, colder now, "Forget it. You'll regret this." The courtroom cracked like glass. A reporter dropped her pen. One juror covered her mouth. Rachel stood up and walked out, shame following her like a shadow. "Ethan?" He shrank in his seat. That moment destroyed his case. But I wasn't done. Outside the courthouse, I gave a quiet statement to the press. Not a loud one. Just a whisper of a truth that would ripple louder than any scream. I was told I was crazy. I was told I was old. I was told to be quiet. But what they forgot was that I remember everything. And I recorded most of it. Then I walked away. Let them write their headlines. Let them tweet and gasp and share. But I had one final play left. Because Ethan's world wasn't just collapsing. It was going to bury someone else too. Rachel. And she didn't know it yet, but the Barrett Foundation's first public expose would begin with her name. The Barrett Foundation launched with little fanfare. A small website. A social media page. A few testimonials from women who'd been manipulated by charming men with sharp teeth. But then came the first newsletter, written by me, under a pseudonym, Eleanor T. Granger. It was titled, "How a Daughter Helped Her Husband Bury the Truth," and called it Loyalty. I didn't use names. Not once. But the story was unmistakably ours. A grieving widow pushed aside. A son-in-law with a smooth voice and wandering hands. A daughter torn between shame and self-preservation. The gaslighting. The exile. The quiet signatures that gave a monster power. The article ended with a single line, "When silence protects a liar, it poisons the soul of the one who keeps it." It went viral. Within 3 days, it had over 40,000 shares. Women wrote in from Ohio, Texas, California, even Canada. Some said it felt like their story. Others said it gave them the courage to finally leave. But one thing was clear: Rachel knew it was about her. And so did everyone in our town. That week, she lost her spot on the PTA board. The neighbors stopped inviting her to brunch. A parent at her daughter's school refused to let their kid attend the same playdate. No one confronted her. No one screamed. But whispers are sharper than knives when they come from all sides. She came to my house again. This time she didn't cry. She begged. "Mom, I'm trying to fix it," she said. "But you're making me out to be the villain. I didn't mean to hurt you." I was scared. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Being scared isn't an excuse for betrayal. You weren't a hostage, Rachel. You were a partner." Her eyes welled. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to speak. Publicly. I want you to stand up and admit what happened. I want you to tell every woman in this town the truth. Because until then, you don't get to play the victim." She hesitated. "What if I lose everything?" "You already lost your mother," I said. "This is your only chance to earn her back." She left in silence. And I let her go. That night, Elise called. "He's cracking in jail," she said. "He's trying to cut a deal. He wants to say you seduced him again in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's blaming you for the fraud." I smiled. Because I was ready for that too. You see, I had saved one last surprise for Ethan. And it involved a forged signature that he didn't know I had proof he copied. Ethan's final move was textbook desperation. His new attorney filed a motion to suppress evidence, claiming the original will was forged by me. They presented a forensic expert who claimed my signature looked too perfect, as if copied and pasted. Ethan sat smugly in court, thinking he'd found his loophole. Thinking maybe, just maybe, he could walk out of that courtroom as a victim, not a predator. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that Henry had left behind one final safeguard. Buried in a folder titled "For Linda, Only If He Lies" on a dusty old hard drive was a screen recording Henry took 2 years before he died. In it, Henry opens a document. The original will. You can see the date stamp, the notarization file, and then, clear as daylight, me signing it in front of our lawyer via Zoom. My voice on the call. The lawyer's voice. A timestamped video file saved with the name will_signing_final. MOV. When I played it in court, there was no noise. No protests. Just Ethan's smirk slowly melting into a pale, twitching expression that looked eerily like fear. The judge paused, leaned forward, and said, "Mr. Barrett, you claimed the will was falsified. Yet here we have a dated, unedited video file showing it being signed and notarized in accordance with the law. This is perjury." Ethan stammered. I didn't know that existed." "Exactly. Because he never believed we'd outsmart him." But the video wasn't the twist. The twist came after, when the DA's investigator, who had started reviewing Ethan's financial history for fraud, uncovered something sickening. Ethan had specifically targeted widowed or aging women tied to modest estates. His entire marriage to Rachel? It started with a job at Henry's insurance firm, where Ethan dug through client files. Found out Henry had cancer. Found out Rachel was an only child. And decided to fall in love. He had preyed on us from the beginning. And Rachel, though manipulated, had helped him hide his tracks, until he betrayed her, too. The courtroom exploded when that came out. Even Rachel, sitting in the gallery, turned away in horror when she saw the report. She ran out, holding her stomach like she might vomit. Good. Let her feel it. Not for me. But for the children she had let grow up in a lie. The judge ordered an immediate revocation of Ethan's bail. He was cuffed again, but this time, there was no shouting. No spectacle. Just silence. Because now, everyone knew exactly who he was. A con man. A liar. A predator. And soon? A prisoner. But I wasn't done. Because a verdict is justice. And what I wanted was revenge. I once believed revenge was about rage, about fire and fury. But I've learned it's quieter than that. It's the whisper that echoes louder than screams. It's truth, unwrapped slowly, painfully, with witnesses. That's what I planned now, a truth so public it would leave permanent scars. Not just on Ethan, but on Rachel. On the legacy they tried to build on my grave. The opportunity came from a national news outlet, the Sunday Pulse. Their producer had seen the viral newsletter from the Barrett Foundation and requested an interview. "We'd like you to tell your story," she said. "How betrayal and silence shaped your family. It might help others." I said yes on one condition: they air it live. No edits. No rewrites. Raw and real. Rachel begged me not to do it. She came to my porch again, shaking, more hollow than I'd ever seen her. "Please, Mom, the kids. They're already hearing things at school. Do you really want them to see this on TV?" I stared at her, the daughter who watched me be exiled, and said nothing. "The kids will be fine," I said coldly. "Children survive truth far better than they survive lies." She tried a different tactic. "I made a mistake. I let him manipulate me. But you've already won. He's in jail. You humiliated me. Isn't that enough?" I stepped close. "You didn't make a mistake, Rachel. You made a series of choices. Every time you chose his voice over mine, every time you let him whisper doubt into your ear and call it logic, you chose this." She left in tears. And the next morning? I got dressed in my late husband's favorite navy shawl, pinned his lapel pin near my collarbone, and walked into that studio with my head held high. The interview began gently: my life, my marriage, Henry's illness. Then it turned. I described how Ethan inserted himself into my grief. How he kissed me. Lied about me. Destroyed my reputation. I shared pieces of the audio. The video. The forged will. The fraud. But then I dropped the real bomb. I had obtained Ethan's sealed juvenile record through a court petition, now approved due to the ongoing criminal investigation. And I had permission to reference it, without specifics, on air. So I looked into the camera, straight through the screen and into every living room in America, and said, this wasn't the first time Ethan Barrett preyed on a vulnerable woman. When he was 17, he was accused of coercion and manipulation by a girl just 15. He was protected then. Covered up by powerful parents and sealed files. But now? Now we know who he really is. And to the women out there who feel silenced, your voice matters more than their reputation. The feed cut back to the anchor, who looked visibly shaken. That night, my inbox exploded. Thousands of messages. Some from strangers. Some from other women who had been involved with Ethan under different names. And one, from a woman named Marjorie Trent, said something I'll never forget: he did the same thing to my aunt in 2012. She killed herself. Thank you for surviving, and for telling the truth. But the message that stopped my breath? Came from Rachel. A single email. No greeting. No subject. Just, you told the truth. I didn't. I don't deserve to be your daughter. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it back. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because the interview wasn't my last move. It was just the match. Now it was time to light the whole house on fire. The fire had caught now. The interview lit up social media, news cycles, and kitchen table conversations across the state. Ethan's name was poison, his face plastered beside words like predator, manipulator, conman. His companies were under forensic audit. His accounts frozen. Every board he once sat on now scrubbed his name like bleach on bloodstains. but still, I wasn't satisfied. Because monsters don't grow in the dark by themselves. They are fed, protected, enabled. I wanted them all exposed. Ethan's trial was still months away, but the DA had widened the investigation. Elise had given the names of 2 financial consultants Ethan had used to launder money through fake nonprofits. The Barrett Foundation turned over everything: forged contracts, ghost donors, fake invoices, all trails that Ethan had tried to cover with charm and forged Excel sheets. But there was one transfer that stood out. A large sum, $150,000, moved into a personal account under a name I knew too well: Cynthia Wexler. Rachel's godmother. Henry's old friend. A woman who always said I was too emotional to handle money after Henry died. A woman who once whispered in Rachel's ear at Henry's memorial, "Let Ethan take care of things. That's what men are for." I paid her a visit. She lived in a gated condo uptown. Greeted me in pearls and a sweater set like she hadn't just stolen my family's future. "Linda," she said with a tight smile, "how brave you've been, going on television like that." I didn't sit. I handed her a printed copy of the wire transfer. "You took blood money, Cynthia. My husband's money. My daughter's trust. My grandchildren's inheritance." She didn't flinch. "I was promised a return. Ethan said it was just a business deal." "Was that before or after you vouched for him at the bank?" Her eyes narrowed. "I have the recording," I said flatly. "You told the loan officer he was your nephew. That you'd known him for years. That you'd stake your name on him." She dropped her teacup. I walked out without another word. The next morning, the Barrett Foundation newsletter posted an exposé titled, "The Aunt Who Wasn't: How Wealth Protects Monsters." Again, no names. But everyone in our town knew exactly who the pearl-wearing enabler with a fake nephew was. Cynthia resigned from her board positions within hours. Her reputation shattered. And just when I thought the web couldn't stretch further, it snapped in the most unexpected place. Rachel came to me. Not to cry. Not to beg. But to confess. "There's something you don't know," she said, sitting on my porch swing like a child again. "Ethan didn't just lie to us. He threatened me. Years ago. After our second miscarriage. He said if I ever left, he'd tell the family it was my fault. That I was broken. That I was cheating." I stared at her. "You let him smear me. But you were afraid of being smeared too." She nodded, ashamed. "And you never told me." "I didn't think you'd believe me. I thought you'd pick him like you picked Dad. You always protected men, Mom." That broke something in me. Because maybe, she was right. Maybe I hadn't seen what she was going through. But it didn't excuse what she allowed. So I said, "You don't get to hide behind that anymore. You either stand up now, with the truth, or stay down and let this family forget you." She looked at me, eyes raw. "Then I want to testify." And that was the beginning of the final storm. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation the day Rachel took the stand. She wore no makeup. No wedding ring. Just a plain navy blouse, her hair pinned back like the girl I used to braid before piano recitals. She looked small, fragile, but her voice, when she spoke, was a blade wrapped in velvet. "I believed him," she said. "I married a man who made me feel seen. After my father died, I needed that. And when he started twisting things, convincing me my mother was unstable, selfish, I let him. Because it was easier to believe him than face the truth, that I married someone just like the men I swore I'd never become." She paused. Her voice shook. "He kissed my mother. She told me." I didn't believe her. I thought she was lonely. But I see now, I see everything. Ethan didn't blink as she spoke. He didn't shift. Just sat behind his lawyers like a wax figure molded from lies. But I saw the twitch in his jaw. The way his fingers curled when Rachel said, "I helped exile the woman who raised me." And I regret it more than anything. The courtroom was silent. Until Ethan's lawyer stood and said, "We'd like to submit new evidence, Your Honor." My stomach dropped. They wheeled in a monitor. A video began to play, grainy, slightly tilted. It showed Rachel. In our old kitchen. Crying. Speaking on the phone. I know she's spiraling. I'm scared she might hurt herself. I don't know what to do. Should I tell Ethan? The date stamp? The night before I was thrown out. The lawyer turned. Your Honor, this video shows the witness acknowledging concern for her mother's mental health. It casts serious doubt on the reliability of her current testimony. Rachel's face went white. That was taken out of context. The judge leaned back. Do you have the full video? Ethan's lawyer smirked. Unfortunately, no. The original file was lost. And just like that, the tide shifted. Doubt slithered back into the room. I felt it. The jurors glancing sideways. The reporter scribbling again. He had planned this. A video. No context. Just enough poison to stain everything. Rachel turned to me after court, eyes wide with guilt. I didn't know he still had that. I was trying to help you. I thought I was helping. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Because I'd seen this play before. Ethan always left a trapdoor behind. A way out. But this time? I was ready. At home, I pulled the old fireproof safe from my closet. Inside were the remaining drives Henry had backed up before his death. He had copied everything. Including the security camera from that exact night. I found the file. Rachel's full conversation. The video Ethan had clipped. In the full footage, Rachel says something Ethan conveniently cut. I know she's spiraling, because she's being lied to. Manipulated. I'm scared she might hurt herself from the way Ethan's twisting things. I don't know what to do. Should I tell Ethan I know? She hadn't been accusing me. She had been defending me. I sat there, breath caught in my chest. Ethan's last card was about to become my final strike. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one Ethan used to sip wine at while complimenting my casseroles, watching the full video on repeat. Rachel, my daughter, had been trying to help. She had been afraid, yes, but her words were twisted, chopped, and rearranged by a man who knew exactly how to poison a heart with doubt. The next morning in court, I arrived early. Calm. Steady. Carrying a small envelope labeled "For the Truth." I handed it to the bailiff without ceremony. This is a critical exhibit, I told him. Video evidence. Full context of what the defense submitted yesterday. The judge admitted it immediately. Play it, he ordered. And we did. The courtroom watched the full footage. Rachel pacing, emotional, but her voice clear. The moment she said Ethan's twisting things, there was a shift. You could feel it in the bones of the room. Like a house settling after an earthquake. When it ended, the judge leaned forward, steel in his voice. Mr. Barrett, your team presented a deliberately altered recording to manipulate this court. That is perjury by omission. I am revoking all remaining motions and escalating your case to the DA's Criminal Fraud Division. Bail is rescinded. You will remain in custody. Ethan stood up and shouted, she forged that. This is a setup. It's not real. But it was too late. The deputies were already moving. They cuffed him again. And this time, he didn't go quietly. He lunged toward Rachel. Fast. Violent. Primal. But he never touched her. Because I was faster. I stood and stepped between them. His shoulder clipped mine, and that was all he managed, before two deputies slammed him against the courtroom wall. One drew a stun gun. The other pinned him to the floor. His screams echoed off the marble. You ruined me, he bellowed at me, red-faced and spitting. I loved you, and you ruined me. I stood there, breath steady, heart cold. And I whispered the last words he'd ever hear from me, "No, Ethan. You ruined yourself the moment you underestimated a mother who remembers everything." The courtroom burst into noise, judges pounding gavels, officers shouting, gasps from the gallery, but I didn't flinch. Rachel collapsed into tears. I didn't hug her. Not yet. Because forgiveness still had one final step. Outside, reporters swarmed us. Cameras flashing. Microphones like daggers. "Mrs. Barrett. Will you be pressing civil charges? Do you regret airing your family's dirty laundry? Do you feel vindicated?" I turned to the sea of lenses and said, "No one wins in betrayal. There's only survival." And mine came with the truth. If you're watching this and someone has stolen your voice, your reputation, your family, record everything. Because one day, the truth won't just set you free, it'll bury the one who buried you. The next day, the Sunday Pulse published its most watched segment in history, "The Widow Who Burned the Lie Alive." But Ethan wasn't done, not yet. Because in his last moments of power, he'd drafted a contingency letter. To my grandchildren. A final, venomous attempt to poison what little family I had left. But he had no idea. I'd already intercepted it. It arrived in a plain white envelope with no return address. The handwriting was unmistakable, Ethan's arrogant loops, the kind that belonged to someone who believed even his lies deserved a signature flourish. It had been slipped into my mailbox in the dead of night, likely by someone working on his behalf. Maybe a lawyer. Maybe a leftover enabler. But when I tore it open and read the contents, my blood iced over. It wasn't just a letter. It was a manifesto. 4 pages long, addressed to my grandchildren, Noel and Ezra, written in language soaked in self-pity and venom disguised as love. He called me a bitter, broken woman who twisted their mother against their father. He wrote, "One day, when you're older, you'll understand how cruel people can be when they feel abandoned. Your grandmother betrayed me. I loved her once, like a son should. And she destroyed our family because she couldn't control her own grief." He ended with a photo. A picture of him holding Noel as a toddler, smiling wide, like he was the hero in a story no one else could read. The cruelty wasn't in what he said. It was in what he wanted them to believe. To doubt their mother. To mistrust me. To feel abandoned by a father who was nothing more than a con in a button-down shirt. It was his last chess move. The kind meant to be played long after he lost. But I didn't destroy it. I used it. I immediately called Rachel. Told her everything. Her voice shook on the other end of the line. "He went around my lawyer, he promised he wouldn't do anything else." She was crying now. "Mom, what do I do?" I said, "You fight. For your children. For your future. And this time, I'll stand beside you." We submitted the letter to the judge overseeing Ethan's custody rights and divorce proceedings. The court froze. The judge called an emergency hearing. In that courtroom, I sat beside Rachel for the first time in over a year. We watched as the judge read the letter aloud, line by venomous line, to a stunned gallery. When he finished, he looked at Rachel and said, "Do you feel your children are safe under this man's influence?" Rachel stood, voice quaking. "No. Not physically. Not emotionally. Not ever." The judge nodded. "Then this court is prepared to act." The gavel came down with force. "Parental rights for Ethan Barrett are hereby terminated." The courtroom was dead silent. Rachel collapsed into my arms. For the first time since Henry's death, we held each other without shame. Noel and Ezra would grow up free of Ethan's manipulation. The final thread had been severed. But justice wasn't just about the courtroom. It was about memory. And I had one last act of revenge. One that would make sure Ethan Barrett's name never saw a plaque, a business card, or a street sign again. Some people want money. Some want control. But men like Ethan? They want to be remembered. Even in disgrace, they want their name to linger like a stench that can't be scrubbed away. And I knew that if I wanted my revenge to last, it couldn't end with a prison sentence. It had to end with erasure. He had built his name into the town like rust in the pipes. A plaque at the local library that read donated in part by Ethan Barrett and family. A small park bench with his name carved into it. A page in the annual Chamber of Commerce report, grinning under the banner Local Success Story. Little things. Subtle. But permanent. Until now. I began with the library. I visited the director, a woman named Margaret who had known Henry for years. I brought documentation, newspaper clippings, legal filings, and a polite but firm request. Your building is meant to educate. His name represents deception, coercion, and harm. I'm asking you to remove it. She did. Not with resistance, but with gratitude. The plaque was pried off the wall that same day. I kept it. Next, the town council. I requested a formal vote to revoke Ethan's name from all city-recognized sponsorships. There were two who hesitated, both had taken his money for local campaigns. But when I revealed the full audit documents, including his secret offshore transfers and the names of his other victims, they voted unanimously. The bench was unbolted and removed. The Chamber of Commerce archived their report and reissued a digital version with Ethan's page blacked out, digitally censored like a ghost story. I didn't stop there. I worked with the Barrett Foundation's legal team to launch a new initiative, Project Clean Slate, a national database that helps communities strip predatory names from public spaces. We received thousands of submissions. It became a movement. Local heroes replaced silent criminals. Survivors reclaimed buildings. Mothers erased monsters. But the final blow? That came at the prison. Elise had a connection, an employee in the Internal Systems Department. She helped push through a quiet change to Ethan's inmate file. His name, once marked in bold, Ethan W. Barrett, was legally changed, under court order, to inmate #433927B. His identity was now a number. No legacy. No name. No story. Except mine. One evening, as I stood in the town square where the bench used to be, Rachel joined me with the kids. Noelle held my hand. Ezra clung to her side. Is it true? Noelle asked, her voice barely a whisper. That he's gone? He's not gone, I said gently. He just doesn't get to hurt anyone anymore. Rachel looked at me, eyes wet. You did it. No, I replied. We did. Eventually. But deep inside, I knew there was one final thing I needed to do. One last visit. To look him in the eyes. And show him what it looks like when a woman doesn't just survive. She wins. The prison was gray, quiet, and cold, like a mausoleum built for the living. The kind of place that smells like bleach and hopelessness. I'd made the appointment 2 weeks prior. I wanted to time it right, after the plaque came down, after his name was stripped from every wall, every newsletter, every memory that wasn't mine. I needed him to know what it felt like to be erased. The guard led me through 2 metal doors and down a long hallway lined with flickering lights. Inmate #433927B was already seated in the visitation room. The moment I saw him, something inside me shifted, not fear, not anger. Just a sharp, perfect clarity. He looked older. Not aged by time, but by consequence. The swagger in his shoulders was gone. His jaw, once clenched with arrogance, hung slack. When he saw me, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, he said, picking up the phone behind the glass, look who came to visit. I was starting to think you'd never get the courage. I didn't smile back. I lifted the receiver. I came, I said, to watch the light die behind your eyes. He chuckled, but it was dry. You know, I was going to offer you a deal. Thought you might want to settle things quietly. You've made your point, Linda. You humiliated me. No, I said. You humiliated yourself. I just handed you the mirror. He leaned forward, voice lower now. You think this ends with you winning? You think Rachel suddenly becomes Mother of the Year? You think those kids won't ask questions one day? I reached into my purse and pulled out a single photo. It was the bench. Gone. The foundation slab underneath. Clean. Empty. I'm not here to convince you, I said calmly. I'm here to tell you what you already know. You no longer exist. Your name. Your legacy. Your power. All of it, gone. You're just a ghost in a jumpsuit. He sneered. You're still bitter I didn't want you. I almost laughed. You kissed me. Lied about me. Tried to destroy me. And you couldn't even do that right. You seduced your way into this family thinking we were weak. But you forgot who raised Rachel. You forgot who buried Henry and still stood upright. His eyes twitched. I could see it now, the fear. The rage. You didn't just lose, I said softly. You were outplayed by the woman you tried to erase. He slammed his fist on the glass. The guard stepped forward. I stood up. But then I stopped. I turned back one last time. There's one more thing, I said. His breath caught. I smiled. Your cellmate? The one you've been bragging to? He's one of Jennifer Cross's cousins. Small world. His face dropped. I walked out without another word. Outside, the sun was bright. Blinding. And Rachel was waiting in the car with the kids, engine running, her eyes hopeful. I slid into the passenger seat. She whispered, was it everything you needed? No, I said. It was more. Because revenge isn't just about watching them fall. It's about knowing they'll never get back up. Before we begin, if my story moved you, even a little, I ask you to do just one thing, subscribe my channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Because I promise you this, no matter where you are, you're not alone. Now let me tell you how it ends. It's been 6 months since I looked Ethan Barrett in the eye for the last time. 6 months since I watched the system carry him away, stripped of his lies, his leverage, and his name. He's still in prison. His trial for federal fraud begins next month. But I don't check the headlines anymore. Because his chapter in my story is over. The Barrett Foundation has grown faster than I ever imagined. What started as a single newsletter has become a movement. We've helped over 300 women across the country reclaim stolen finances, prove coercion, and expose abusers who hid behind wedding bands and false charm. The world calls them victims. I call them warriors. Rachel and I still speak every day. Healing is slow. But real. She works with the foundation now. She leads workshops for women who lost their voice to men like Ethan. She even spoke at a conference last week, standing tall in front of 200 strangers and saying, "My mother saved my life by never letting me forget the truth." I cried in the back row. Not because she finally saw me, but because she finally saw herself. Noelle and Ezra, my grandchildren, are thriving. They ask questions, as kids should. And I answer honestly, without bitterness. Because the best revenge isn't destroying what destroyed you. It's rebuilding what they thought they'd broken forever. The bench in the town square? It's been replaced. There's no name on it this time. Just a quote, carved in stone, "You only lose when you forget who you are." I sit there sometimes, just to feel the wind again. Just to remember I survived. So if you've made it this far, if you've listened to every twist, every betrayal, every scar, hear me now, you are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not what they called you. You are truth. And truth never dies, it just waits for someone strong enough to speak it. I was that someone. And if you're listening, so are you. Thank you for being part of this journey. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe my channel. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Because this story may have ended. But your voice? It's just beginning.